Scott sent a lovely, lovely little telling of an experience of his that'll go on the website, but it's so, I don't know, it's so tender. I thought maybe I would share that and put it in the context of something that I wanted to share today. And I'll shorten it a little bit, but he says, he works, he takes a break every day and he walks through this parking lot, and he said on those walks I often see worms in dangerous places on the pavement or the sidewalk. So today I walked across a large parking lot, and in the middle, many yards from the nearest garden, I saw a little worm. He was no more than 2 or 3 inches long, and he was weak and tired and crawling the best he could towards the middle of the parking lot. He was crawling in exactly the wrong direction from anything that was good for him. He was heading straight to his doom and demise. He was getting closer to a crow sweeping down, or a duck eating him, or some terrible death. He was crawling over hard and uneven pavement that could only be uncomfortable, and I bet he thought he was happy. I'll bet he was going toward everything he thought was good for him. He crawled over 100 feet in the wrong direction. I thought how persistent and diligent he was to do exactly the wrong thing for himself. How like ourselves. We work and work to be unhappy, to get closer and closer to a terrible existence. No one put him there. No one picked him up and put him into danger. He did it all by himself. And then he goes on to say, I'm sure he came from a garden where everything would have been perfect, perfect soil, but his happiness was already like present within him. And he said, had I been his worm mother, I would have been heartbroken to see him do this to himself. But if I were a worm, there was not much I could do for him. However, as the bodhisattva I am, with my 2 arms, 1 head, and, quote, omniscience, I was able to pick him up and put him back in the garden. This is the way of a bodhisattva. I'm so glad I've taken those vows, bodhisattva vows. It was only 1 worm, but I'll do my best. I promise, I'll do my very, very best with every worm that I can. If only I had more hands, more arms, more eyes. That's so beautiful. And, I don't know how much over the days that I would share about being with my mom at the time of her death, but one of the things that was really vivid was this experience of, I was in the hospital. We were in ICU for about 76 hours or something. Only 11 of those hours was I not in the hospital. I was in the hospital a lot. And just this phenomenon that I experienced was, how I talk about the waves of people that come to the Abbey. The tide goes out, time comes in. People go, we're low tide for a while, and this 35 people come in for the weekend, and the tide goes back out. The same thing was happening in this ICU waiting room. Because whole families come and camp out there. They're sleeping on the couches. They've got their meals there. They know it's too expensive to go out and eat in the hospital, so they've got little picnics there, and they're all on their cell phones, and they're calling their other relatives, and, in comes this wave. And then out comes a doctor. The whole family bursts into tears. Somebody's gone, and the family goes. And then a whole other family moves right in. It's just like wave after wave after wave of people coming, people dying, people leaving, people coming, people dying, people leaving. And nobody expects to be there. Nobody woke up and said, today I'm going to ICU. Nobody. And for whatever reason, my mom had this premonition, or whatever, that she completed with all of her children in the last week before she died. She had this kind of completion conversation with each of us, very different. But in retrospect, we all put wow, how did she know? But you know, that is a miracle. Most people don't get that. So somehow this little story about the worm and how we spend our whole lives crawling across the parking lot in the wrong direction, and then boom, in comes the wave into the ICU, out they go. Not everybody in ICU died. A lot of people in ICU died. So anyway, for me, one of the big lessons is to try to hold clearly that there's nothing but, to help each other put ourselves back in the garden. And put ourselves back in the garden before we go to bed tonight, because who knows where we're going to be by tomorrow. So, I'm really praying that some of the insights of this experience stay with me. And I know that ignorance and distraction and all that stuff eventually dulls what we learn. But what a sweet story, huh? This thing about the worm. So may we all have more eyes, more arms, more hands, more possibility to help each other back to the garden.